Hello and welcome to Casio tutorial and review number 3 on the XW-P1. This number 3 is replacing a number 3 I posted a few days ago. I felt it was too confusing and I'm replacing it. Today we're dealing with mainly the outside functions of the buttons and how it can be used as a performance synthesizer on stage. When they say performance synthesizer, that means it can be set up for the stage, and you should be able to save entire presets of everything on this and bring up each preset that matches each song that you will perform on stage. So this does have performance presets, and it has at least, let's see, it has 9 banks of 10 for 10 banks of 10 for 100 presets. That's performance presets. That is everything saved under a performance. That would mean if you have a phrase sequence and you save the phrase sequence, you would then save it again as the name of that sequence under performance mode. Same with arpeggio. If you created your own arpeggio, you would save the arpeggio under the arpeggio save and then save that name again under the performance. And same with the step sequencer. If you chose a step sequencer or you made your own step sequence, you would save that step sequence as its own sequence, and then again you would save that under performance mode. So you can see there's 2 layers of saves to get it to save to performance. Now I've been working with this synthesizer now for 2 years trying to figure out how to use it as a performance synthesizer. And it's called a performance because we have these 4 assignable knobs up here, while under solo synth these are K1, K2, K3, 4. They're not labeled because they are assignable. I can assign anything, any of the CC, MIDI, up 128 different options to each one of these. And we have these sliders down here, which are active depending on which mode you're in. Solo synth, right now, I'm controlling master volume with this total control here. And parameters A and 3, A and B is controlling the DSP effects. And we have 4 oscillators that can be stacked on a solo synth mode, and I'm controlling those. So in performance mode, I can control the levels of each 4 oscillators and the DSP effect and the overall volume, and there's also a noise generator that I can control. And the 5th one is an external input coming in, can be run through one of the oscillator filters and envelopes, and you can control another sound coming in. If you MIDI cabled in to if you had a little mono analog synth over here, you can MIDI cable to that synth, output that synth to the input here and process it. You can also put a mic in here and process that through there too if you wanted to. Anything on the external inputs can be processed through this 5th one here. And As far as performance goes, we have the standard bender, and modulation. And of course anything, and you have the pedal too. We have a single pedal input which can be assigned to anything you want to. Same. And the bender can go from no octave to 24 octaves and anything in between. Those are standard performance controls. These are somewhat standard performance controls. These are something you normally would get on a higher end synth, where you have control over each oscillator when you're stacking layers, such as the next mode is the hex layer. Now you'll notice when I play, well, I'm going to go over that later. Again, I'm on the hex layer, it's lit up. This one is my total volume. Now I have to reset these. I have to move them and reset because this is digital. These are digital. The only way these function where you can actually see what you're playing on the keyboard is to reset them like I just did. Now, these are an exact representation of what I'm playing on the keyboard. But as soon as I hit the hex layer again, it's going to go back to its preset saved. So let me set these up. Okay, so there's the setup for this that I wanted here. But as soon as I hit hex, it's going to go back to the save layer. And these again don't represent what I'm playing until they're, and they will never represent what's saved unless you know exactly where each one of these sliders go. You would have to come over here and actually write down these. They're in increments of 10. So you could actually write down each slider and say that was 5, that's 6, that's 4, that's 7, that's 10. That's 3, and my total volume is all the way up. My DSP effects are on 5 and 6. And as long as that was written down and you put these sliders back in there, you would have, these would represent what you're playing again. That is just digital control. That works for these too. These knobs, they don't become active until you move them. Otherwise the preset overrides anything over here. As soon as you hit your preset and you start to move any of these over here, they'll start to override that function. But they're going to take off in the middle, so it's not going to be very smooth. It's not going to be a smooth transition unless they're already in the same position, which they can't be. So you're always going to have a little jump in the sound as you try to edit something. So here I got just a... So here you're hearing just one oscillator out of 6. Back to the preset. Preset's got all of these already set up. And that's going to have to get your head around as far as performing with this synthesizer, because it's going to have these are not going to be representative of your solo synth, your hex layer, or your drawbar organ. Right now I'm playing a preset of my drawbar organ. It's my user 00. And it's not what these sliders are showing. So we have to reset them all. Now it should be nothing. Oh, we got nothing. Now as I bring these in, now these are representing exactly what I'm playing. And as soon as I hit my drawbar organ again or go to any other tone, these settings will be lost. So if I go to a piano tone, okay, I'm done playing that. Now I'm going to go back to my drawbar organ, and if you expect to see this, you're not going to get it. And you did. It's because they're digital. They don't represent anything except what you're working on at the time. As soon as I go from drawbar organ to hex layer, it's playing my preset song. It's not playing what's actually visible here. That'll be their biggest confusion part, and that works for these knobs up here. They don't take over until you actually move them. So like, now these are live for only the solo synth. You can use them on hex layer and you can use them on the PCMs, but they act differently. You can only do a filter sweep, such as that, on the solo synth. On the hex layer, it won't recognize a sweep while the key's down. You have to come off of the keyboard and stop playing to change these. So I'm going to go through the filter by stepping on and off of the keys. So it's not something you could really work out on stage. And that works the same for all of these controls. Now there's no resonant control on the hex layer, so K2 is defaulting to detune. And then we have an attack and a release. So each one of these are edited. You know, the drawbar organ doesn't use these, it only uses these. The solo synth uses these and has full control up here. The hex layer has a semi-control up here. And the PCM tones, these 5 here, let's get something that's... I just did a filter sweep and you can't hear it. And again, the PCM tones are working just like the hex layer. You have to come off the key and it resets it then. Now in tone mode, these are coming up as defaults for what, you know, on the PCM, it's cutoff, it's attack time, it's release time, and it's reverb send. So you can basically make a short sounding synth. Depending on what tone you select, they will all edit a little differently. Again, probably the solo synth is the only thing you could actually edit on stage. So now we're getting around to, well, this is called a performance synthesizer. This is a XW-P1 hybrid processing sound source. And while it can do what I just showed you on single tones, as soon as you're on stage and you want to switch to a different tone, that's where this becomes a non-performance synthesizer. You can go through these 8 selections here. You can go through those in tone mode. But I have not Okay, I've adjusted the volume of that tone. And you can see as soon as I got switched away and came back, the volume came reset right back again. Any volume changes that you make to balance these up during a performance, you would have to save that as their own user tone. Again, that's just not feasible for a performance synthesizer. So for 2 years I've been trying to figure out how am I supposed to get 8 tones at my fingertips saved in the performance so that when I switch to my performance 9-0, that's going to be a certain set list over here. 9-0 is going to represent the song. I can save the song name and I can save the number that it is. So 9-0 could be the song 1. 9-1 could be song 2. But what happens when you do that? The performance does not save any of these tones in here. Any of the tones you set up in here, like I have right now, those tones are going to be the same no matter what preset you go to. The only way you can get the tones to come with the preset is to use the there's 4 zones in here, 1 to 4 zones. In a previous tutorial I showed you how to set up zones. A zone can be an octave, a whole keyboard. It can be anything you want. You got a key range where you can set anything up. So if you're going to use all 4 zones, this bottom octave could be 1 zone, and it could be maybe a bass guitar. And this next 2 octaves, maybe it's going to be a string section. This octave might be a piano, and then the top octave may be reserved for a solo synth. When you set up in zones, you can play 4 different tones at the same time. You can't play them across the entire keyboard. You can only play them within the zone. Now you can stack those on top of each other too, but in a performance that doesn't quite pan out. When you set up your forms, okay, 0, I'm on 9-0, I'm going to play set list number 1 song. That's the way it's supposed to be. You hit 0, the band's going on, oh, no, we're going to skip that one, do song 2, okay? I hit my next preset. Okay, now everything should be set up for song 2, but it's not. Everything in here doesn't change. It will not save the tones I set up inside here. The only way it'll save tones is to set them up in each individual layer, which means you cannot switch between 4 tones across 4 zones. You can't get the tone to solo. If all I wanted was a piano across the entire zone and then I wanted to switch to the solo synth, it's not possible to save that. And that's why I am not calling this a performance synthesizer. If I don't have these tones at my fingertips ready to go, I want a piano, and within the saved performance, this piano should be the piano I selected at the level I selected with the reverb and any effects I put on it and any detuning, anything I did to it, all should be saved. And while you can save all of that within the tone save, you cannot save the actual tone that you saved in the performance. As soon as I go to you can set this up manually if you want. You could tell, hey, band, hey, wait a minute, I got to set up my next performance. And you go through each one of these, and in about 5 minutes you can have all your tones set up if they're written down. Okay, this is song number 3. Okay, I need solo synth 02. I need hex layer number 1. I need drawbar organ number 47. I need piano number 67 for a pipe organ. You can manually go through and set all that up if you want. But the band's not going to wait on you. You're going to get fired. So I've looked for workarounds on this, and the only workaround I came up with is you can set this up through the mixer. Through the mixer on here, you can set up 7 different sounds that can be played by themselves. Extremely awkward, something I would never use on stage, but it is possible to do it, and maybe if you do it enough and you're aware of what's going on, because you got to be completely aware of where this is at, because if you start moving sliders when you think it's on the solo synthesizer and you're changing the step sequencer or the drawbar organ, again, your whole performance is screwed up. You got to go back to performance, reset it back, and go back to here. So as you can see, it's very confusing. And even more confusing is the workaround to get the individual instruments to show up. So what I've done beforehand is under my performance preset, I have saved in the mixer, and the only way you can access the mixer is this plus or minus button. So you got to keep tapping until you get to the one you want. So in the mixer you got 16 channels. Each one of these 16 channels has a different setting on it. So channel 1 can have either a solo synth, hex layer, or drawbar organ. You cannot put those anyplace else on the mixer. If you try to put a solo synth in channel 2 or 2 through 16, it won't let you. It's because you can only play one of these at a time. So here we have a performance synthesizer with all kinds of sounds in here, but when you're playing the solo synth, hex layer, or drawbar organ, none of those can be played together at the same time unless you buy a second keyboard. If you buy a second keyboard, you could play the hex layer and a solo synth at the same time. Within this one, you cannot. I didn't learn that till after I bought it, and that was pretty disappointing to know that I can't play a hex layer behind a solo synth. Now for $500 they're telling us, well, the CPU is overloaded as it is, we can't get it to play that way. Well, that's something you have to decide for the price of a synthesizer. Maybe it's worth it to spend $500, $1,000 total, and have 2 of these. If you really like the synth, you might want 2 of them. But then you'll have to check out what's available out there in one synth for $500. Now I'm always a fan of having a synthesizer do very little and then having combinations of them work together, because you have extra keyboards to play. Now, of course, as you add keyboards, it gets more complex for your presets. You have to make sure all your presets match from one to the other, and that gets quite a bit complex too. So we're only let's just deal with the one keyboard today, and we're trying to play the different sounds that this can produce that are set up in here at the same time. And the only way that's going to happen is through the mixer. So on channel 1, I have a hex layer, and you can see these buttons light up as I change them. On channel 2, I have a piano. Channel 3, I got a string. I have the electric guitar there. I have a synth there, and another synth on various. So as you go through your performance, this is the only way that you can actually control the volume and mixer settings. So each one of these PCM tones, the piano, they all have been preset with their own levels. I got them all balanced out with volumes. I got them all balanced out with how much reverb I want on each instrument. And they now can be played they all can be played with a step sequencer if you want, or they can be played solo. And this, each one of these tones will be played across the entire each one of these tones will be played solo across the entire keyboard. Now if you want to stack sounds, that would be your hex layer. Now the hex layer, solo synth, and drawbar organ all work off of channel 1. So while you're using the part plus and minus buttons to go between different channels and different sounds, when on channel 1 you have to use the front panel button to go through these three sets, the solo synth, hex layer, and drawbar organ. Now you can't balance the drawback on using the mixer to select your tones is you cannot set volume levels for each one of these. So what you have to do is set the volume level on channel 1 if you're going to use the drawbar organ. If you're going to use all three of these, the solo synth, hex layer, and drawbar organ, if you're going to use all three of these in a single song, you would have to set your mixer volume level for the drawbar organ, and then when you get to the hex layer, it becomes even more awkward, because now you got to get out of the mixer setting so you have your hex layer control of your volume. Otherwise these are going to come up at max volume when you bring them up. And the other main disadvantage is if you bought this synthesizer as part of your band to play the step sequencer, if the step sequencer is taking the place of a drummer and a bass player, you cannot transpose while in the mixer mode. You cannot transpose. So if you want to use the step sequencer and you want to transpose to the keys that the band's playing, you won't be able to do that. You'll have to play the bass manually if you're in mixer mode. And if you're in mixer mode, of course, you can't even play the bass because all you can play is the single tone that's being soloed. So you have your choice. You either can't use the step sequencer in a performance along with being able to change tones, or if you're going to use the step sequencer in a performance, you'll have to set everything up in zones and play all your tones through a zone. So as you can see, as a performance instrument, because we cannot really select tones easily and change tones during our performance and not be able to save any of these tones during a performance, and the only place you can save them is under the mixer function where they're being soloed. You will find this to be quite awkward to switch tones and impossible to play, really, well, not impossible, but so awkward if you're running the step sequencer at the same time and trying to play the solo instruments you got saved in here. And I don't mean solo synth, I mean each one of these 8 instruments, if they're saved on their own channel in the mixer, they can be soloed while in mixer mode. But while in mixer mode, You'll have to switch to step sequencer mode to actually change rhythms. So that's not something you could actually do as a live on stage thing unless you're very, very good at what you're doing. There's a lot of switching. That means there's going to be time gaps. You're not going to, as soon as you go through a fill and end up on a new beat of the sequencer, there's my time gaps, there's a fill, there's my main beat, but now I need to switch the mixer on, toggle through to find my instrument to play, and now I start to play it. So if I want to switch to a new sequence, I got to get out of the mixer mode. Then I go back to mixer, find my instrument again. As you can see, there's a lot of button pushing going on just to try and select a new tone. And that is unacceptable. That's unacceptable. This tone bank here needs to come up and be saved in performance so that on each song that I save a new performance for, I have the exact sounds in here that I need for that performance. So there's your workarounds. I'll go over them quickly here. To solo an entire keyboard and get choices in tone during a performance, you will need to set these up beforehand, save them as a performance, set each MIDI channel up, or each channel up in a mixer mode. So you're going to go to mixer 1, you're going to choose the tone, mixer 2, and you can have up to 7. So 7's got drums on it. Let's say I just want to, maybe I want under various, I got different synths in here. Let's get something a little, okay, crystals. So now I got a channel 7 with the crystal, an atmosphere on 6, channel 5's got star voice, channel 4's got guitar, channel 3's got a string, channel 2's got a stereo piano user that I made, and channel 1 you have to select between solo synth, hex layer, and drawbar organ. Now even if you save this as a preset with each channel will 2 through 7, each one of those channels is a good solid save. You will have those in and available to you to solo in the while in mixer mode. But solo synth, hex layer, and drawbar organ, those are not going to be saved. So you may have to, in a performance setting, if you're going to use all 3 of these, solo synth, hex layer, and drawbar organ, if you're going to use all 3 of those in a single performance, you'll have to manually go make sure that each one of those are set. And you'll have to have those written down to make sure you got the right number to go to. And again, the band's not going to want to wait on you. You're going to go, wait, I'm not ready yet. Hold on a minute. I got to pick out my solo synth for channel 1. That's going to be 10. I got to pick out my hex layer. It's going to be 3. And drawbar organ is going to be number 20. Okay, so, and now these 5 are coming with the performance preset, so we're ready to go. But these aren't. there now. Okay, song's over. I'm going to my next preset. Now what do I got? It's reset back to solo synth. So these three are not being saved in the preset. So even if you do use the workaround and use the mixer settings to set up the PCM tones, it's not going to help you with these other three. That means there's no possible way to save everything you need for a performance in the performance save. And that makes it impossible to use on stage, or so awkward that you're not going to look very professional. So you're either going to have two keyboards that I'm trying to think how would you even do it with two keyboards. Can't think of a way. So I'd say as a stage synthesizer, if you're going to set up a preset, these are all very awkward ways of doing it. The workaround number one is the, hey band, wait, and spend about 3 minutes setting up each one of these. Every time you change a preset and go to the next song, any of these that need to be changed will have to be manually changed in between each song. Workaround number two, PCM tones. You can set those up ahead of time and save them in a preset, but the only way to access them is through the mixer button, which means they're going to be soloed through the mixer button. And while the mixer's lit, you won't have access to step sequence or tone or anything else. That's workaround number two. Workaround number three is to set everything up on one zone and then go to each different preset for a different tone. So if you needed a preset for song number one, okay, we're on set list one, song one. I go to my performance, go to the number associated to song one, and now I have to write this down. I'm playing 3 different tones throughout this song. So when I want to switch a tone, I have to know which one to do, either 1 or 2. So preset 0 is going to have one tone, preset 1 is going to have another tone, preset 9.2 is going to have another tone. And I have to remember that I have to go through 3 presets to get a different sound saved to that zone. And that's awkward. So I don't really understand what's going on here. It's a performance synthesizer, yet I don't have access to changing tones within a performance. I do have access, but the access is so awkward that I'm going to make mistakes. And during performance, the last thing you need to worry about is, am I in the right screen? Am I on the right one over here? In mixer mode, I'm going, why can't I switch to it? Oh, I'm in mixer mode. Good luck. Good luck doing that on stage. So I'm abandoning this synthesizer as a stage synth. And for the rest of the tutorial and review, we're going to be reviewing this as a studio synth, because I don't see any worth for this on stage. I would never play this on stage. It's way too awkward, way too complex, of too many button changes to make it all work. I want to be able to hit one preset that's got everything saved and know that when I hit this button, I'm going to get the string that I saved in there, the piano I saved in there, the drawbar, organ, hex layer, and solo synth I saved in there. And as far as I can tell, there's no way of doing that. And there we have a summary of setting up this as a performance synthesizer, trying to change tones, trying to change step sequences, trying to manipulate tone while you're playing. Another thing you'll notice is I didn't get any manipulation. It's because I'm in performance mode. While in performance mode, each zone, you'll have to assign these to each zone. Right now there's no assignment to it. In tone mode, there's a default assignment. In performance mode, you're going to have to assign these manually to each zone. Now you might say, well, that's too much work for each performance you're going to do. Well, you're going to want to set up a template. You're going to want to set up a template for solo synth, hex layer, and drawbar organ, and then once those are saved as templates, you would a template or a copy of that can be written over to your preset. The copy is made by, if I want to, I'm on performance setting user 90. If I want to copy 90 to 92, I would go 90, right, I would change the performance number to 92, press enter, and yes. Now performance setting 0 and performance setting 2 are identical. So now if you already had these set up, you can go ahead and set 9.2 up to anything different that you want to set up from 9.0. Now it's as easy as that was to copy, it's that easy to actually save it over the top of another performance. So you may have spent 4 or 5 hours setting up a performance to its perfection, and then you went, and then while in a different performance you accidentally saved it to that other performance, you would overwrite it and lose it forever unless it's backed up to SD card. So as you're setting the synthesizer up, and it's going to take you hours and hours to set it up, to each song that you're going to set into a performance, you're going to want to back it, each one of those up to an SD card, and then make sure that that SD card is perfect. And then take that SD card out, put a second SD card in, and save the entire synthesizer to that one. Now when you go to concert and on stage, you'll have a backup of everything that's supposed to be on there, and if you screw it up, you can always just download the whole card back in. And you'll have a backup card if this card fails. Backup, backup, backup when you're on stage. And I think that's as far as we're going to go on this performance setting and trying to use outside controls. On the next synthesizer, we're going on the next Casio video or tutorial and review. We're going to go focus in on the display, and we're going to set up a one zone performance, and then we're going to set up a 4-zone performance and show you exactly all the menu items needed. We'll also go through how the menu button works differently with these buttons, and the setting buttons work differently. And during that time, it's going to be a long video because we're going to have to use the mixer, which is complicated, to set up a perfectly balanced 4-zone synth. So until video number 4, this video 3 is replacing the video 3 I put up there for about a week. So I hope those people that have already watched 3 will come back and watch it again. And thank you. That's it for today. See you next time.